Welcome to another episode of Daily Airline News. I'm Jeffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say, joined by my co host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you, Jeffrey.
Viewers, this episode is SAA 295 Helderberg, episode 260. But before I give you the introduction to this very controversial air crash, Richard's going to give you an update on another controversial air crash and the search for it. Richard.
Yes, MH370. And wanted to let the viewers know that Armada 8605, one of the new vessels from Ocean Infinity, has just arrived at anchor in Singapore. It sailed down from Vietnam, where the 86 fleet is being built, and completed sea trials, and now on its first voyage down to Singapore. Um, we'll be watching where it goes next, and of course, very interested in whether it heads to the southern Indian Ocean.
Mm,
The weather down in the southern Indian Ocean is still a bit nasty. Sea wave height of 4 meters or so, calming down a little bit now, but still 3.8 meters. And the wind is still 19 knots, which is, a pretty strong breeze. So we'll keep an eye on that one.
yes, in fact, we've had one of the wettest winters on record. I think the record for rainfall for August and September was broken. And we've just had one storm front after another move through, and they're still coming through at the moment. So it may be quite a few weeks before they feel it's settled down enough to resume the search, Richard.
Yeah. Well,
Mm,
we'll keep an eye on the weather as well as the Ocean Infinity ships.
absolutely. So, viewers, as I said, Helderberg, SAA 295. On the 28th of November 1987, a South African Airways Boeing 747 244B combination passenger and cargo aircraft, or a combi, named Helderberg, registration Zulu Sierra Sierra Alpha Sierra, departed from Taipei, Taiwan for Mauritius, I should say for Johannesburg via Mauritius. A fire broke out in the cargo hold, and the plane crashed into the Indian Ocean northeast of Mauritius while attempting an emergency landing at Mauritius. All 159 people on board perished. The main official investigation in the Republic of South Africa, RSA, was the Board of Inquiry chaired by Cecil Margot, the Margot Report, issued in 1990. South Africa has been a member of ICAO since its formation in 1947, but did not have an independent air accident investigation organisation in 1987. There were 9 board members, but only one aviation expert from the UK and one medical expert from Japan. Everyone else was effectively a state representative or a legal figure. Notably, the NTSB from the United States, Boeing and Pratt& Whitney were not members of the Board of Inquiry. The Margot Board of Inquiry did not comply with ICAO Annex 13 requirements, even by the standards that existed in the late 1980s. The Margot inquiry was hampered by the isolation politics against the apartheid regime at the time. NTSB, Boeing and Pratt& Whitney all made written submissions and were invited to give evidence. The US Navy and the French Navy were not asked to help recover the wreckage or the black boxes. Instead, commercial organisations were contracted. This was a political choice to avoid military involvement. The CVR was recovered, but the data was degraded and only partially available due to the fire. The FDR was never recovered. Richard, what was the conclusion of the official investigation?
Well, the board did not come to a definitive conclusion. Everyone agreed there was a fire, but there was no expert on aircraft fire forensics on the board of inquiry. Not all the wreckage was recovered due to a lack of heavy lift equipment. It's also clear that the Captain Hughes, and the flight crew did not know the exact contents of the cargo on board. The freight forwarders in Taiwan sealed the cargo, and the SAA ground staff did not inspect the cargo prior to departure. South African Airways simply accepted the declaration by the freight forwarders that there were no dangerous goods in the cargo. And Taiwan Customs inspected the cargo in a surprise spot check, but they also did not find anything suspicious.
Now, Richard, you've done your own investigation, have you not? So, what did you find?
Well, based on the available fire forensic information and the structural evidence from the wreckage and the cockpit voice recorder clues, the and a comparative analysis with other cargo fire accidents, SAA 295 exhibited fire behaviors strongly consistent with a self-oxidizing or oxidizer-driven cargo fire. Obviously, when a fire happens, the level of oxygen is very important. The event remains officially unconfirmed due to incomplete cargo documentation, lack of a verified manifest from Taipei, and limited residue sampling from the wreckage during the original investigation. The fire is not directly comparable to other major cargo fires like the UPS Flight 6, which was a lithium ion battery thermal runaway fire, because that technology was not commercialized back in 1987. And ValueJet is another chemical oxygen fire, which had a bunch of chemical oxygen generators on board. And both of these fires, however, from UPS 6 and ValueJet 592, produced similar fire dynamics and structural effects. We're showing a screenshot of the fire phases from initial ignition to the crew being overwhelmed in each of the accidents, and the phases are exactly the same in each accident. There was a delay in smoke detection, then a sudden rapid escalation of the fire, and then the fire became self-sustaining with the oxygen input. And finally, it spread forward to the cockpit, and it knocked out flight systems and overwhelmed the flight crew.
Hmm. Were there dangerous goods on board, though?
Well, the South African Airways policy at the time prohibited dangerous goods on passenger aircraft, but the fire behavior on SAA 295 is consistent with dangerous goods being on board, and specifically consistent with undeclared oxidizing or reactive materials. In aviation, there are 5 classes of fire, and there are 6 different categories of cargo compartment. And SAA 295 was a Class A fire initiated by Class D oxidizers. And the cargo hold on the main deck behind the passenger compartment was a so-called Class B main deck cargo hold. And there are strict regulations as to what cargo you can put in which type of cargo hold. And hence, SAA policy was to prohibit dangerous goods being carried. However, oxidizers like sodium chlorate or potassium perchlorate are white powders, and they're shipped in plastic laminated bags and placed inside cardboard drums or double wall cartons. And they resemble ordinary industrial powders, salts or resins or fillers. And if the forward or shipper of the cargo misidentified them as, I don't know, bleaching powder or cleaning chemicals or textile agents or just industrial goods, then they could be placed on a passenger aircraft without dangerous good processing.
Mm. So, in your view, what were the characteristics of the cargo fire?
Well, the first thing, it was self-sustaining combustion. So persistent burning despite the crew attempts to suppress or mitigate. The first thing you do when you have a fire is depressurize the cargo bay because that reduces the oxygen level. And oxygen releasing behavior, evidenced by the oxygen rich clean burn surfaces and metal oxidization patterns, is inconsistent with a typical hydrocarbon or Class A cargo fire when packaging or luggage gets caught on
Mm.
fire. So it was insensitive to depressurization. Fire progression did not slow following depressurization, strongly implying an internal oxygen source. And the fire moved upward and downward and forward all at the same time, which a normal Class A fire does not do. And there was an explosive heat escalation and increased intensity when airflow was introduced. At one point, the door to the cargo area was opened, and that proved to be a big mistake. Extremely high temperatures resulted, and they actually melted metal. So we had dripping melted aluminium being found in the wreckage.
Mm.
And collectively, all of these characteristics align with an oxidizer accelerated fire involving chemicals capable of releasing oxygen under heat stress. We're showing another screenshot of the fire evidence from SAA 295, UPS 6, and ValueJet 592. And it's interesting that in every case, the floor beam annealing occurred, aluminium dripping occurred, alloy recrystallization occurred, wiring got vaporized, and in each case, there was a very clear epicenter to the fire with localized, very powerful heat. So it looks to me a pretty conclusive evidence.
Absolutely. What was the most probable chemical cause?
Well, given the aviation technology and freight profile of 1987 and the cargo operations between Taiwan and South Africa, the most plausible dangerous goods category capable of producing the observed fire behavior are strong oxidizers, chlorates, perchlorates, or persulfates. These chemical families are widely used in electronics, for printed circuit board fabrication. They're used also in textile bleaching. They're used obviously in chemical laboratories as reagents, and they're also used in metal finishing.
Mm.
So widely used products, and they are known to produce high temperature, self-sustaining, oxygen-releasing fires and to ignite violently when interacting with plastics or solvents or packaging materials. This
Mm.
class of chemicals reproduces every fire signature documented in the Helderberg accident.
Mm. Now, as we alluded to in the introduction, the original investigation was really severely limited, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, first of all, the cargo manifest from Taipei was incomplete, inconsistent, and never independently verified. And then there's no systematic analysis of the chemical residue on the recovered debris. And critical components, such as the baseboards of the cargo pallets or the cargo liner samples on the wall of the cargo area, and metallic debris exhibiting high temperature damage were not subject to the usual fire analysis techniques. Now, these techniques existed back in 1987, but of course, today we have much more sensitive
Mm.
techniques at our disposal.
Mm.
The investigative framework assumed an external oxygen fire, but gave very limited consideration to the oxidizer driven or self oxygenating reactions. And these limitations prevent the investigation from moving from vague statements such as, oh, this is consistent with, to stronger statements such as, we have demonstrated.
Mm. Now, you're proposing a modern fire forensic analysis using today's techniques.
Yes, and to resolve the outstanding ambiguity and move from circumstantial consistency towards a scientific confirmation, there are two modern tests that should be done and conducted on any preserved wreckage, and especially the cargo floor panels and the metallic structure fragments, which exhibited high temperature oxidization. The two tests, the first one is a test of the residue chemistry. We can use what is called ion chromatography, IC, and that will detect oxidizer anions. And there are other mass spectrometry and coupled plasma tests which can be done, and they get traces of alkali metals like sodium or potassium or lithium or magnesium. And the second test is one done on the metallurgy and the surface analysis. And meanwhile, we can use electron microscopes and X-ray devices, which will allow us to analyze exactly what happened and how these materials were changed by the fire. It actually allows you to rebuild the fire progress through the cargo hold. And these methods can positively identify oxidizer residues down to the nanogram or microgram level, even after immersion, corrosion, and cleanup.
What is the purpose of such testing, Richard?
Well, the objective is to determine whether oxygen releasing oxidizers were used and present in the cargo, and whether they contributed to a self oxidizing and oxidizer driven fire. And thereby we can prove with scientific clarity the origin and the root cause of the fire, and then resolve this accident, which has remained unresolved for more than 3 decades.
So, what is your conclusion so far?
Well, based on the fire forensics and the cargo on board SAA 295, it must have included an undeclared or a mislabeled dangerous good of comparable energy release and oxygen releasing behavior as the 81,000 lithium ion batteries on UPS 6 or the 144 chemical oxygen generators on ValueJet 592.
Mm.
And although the energy and oxygen releasing behavior were the same, the cause is not lithium batteries or chemical oxygen generators in the case of SAA 295. But the spread and the effect and the timeline of the fire was identical in all three cases. So, in my view, SAA 295 sustained a Class A cargo fire that is consistent with the presence of undeclared oxidizers. And such oxidizers are fully capable of initiating a fire, like a thermal runaway with lithium batteries. It can be self heating and you have a runaway contamination reaction. And that can drive a rapid and uncontrollable spread of a fire by releasing heat and oxygen. And that defeats any liner containment or conventional fire suppression methods.
So, what did the flight crew know about the cargo in on SAA 295 or UPS 6 or ValueJet 592?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. And in all three cases, the flight crew were not informed of the nature of the cargo being carried. And there were no notifications to the captain, so called NOTOC, that dangerous goods were in the cargo area. So a NOTOC a notification to the captain is standard procedure if dangerous goods are being carried. And UPS Flight 6 back in 2010 had no NOTOC for the 81,000 lithium ion batteries, and they were declared under an exemption not requiring dangerous goods paperwork. And those rules have now been changed. And ValueJet 592 back in 1996 had 144 chemical oxygen generators, and they were improperly packaged and mislabeled. So they weren't declared as hazardous materials, and therefore no NOTOC was issued. And on SAA 295, no NOTOC was issued either. The cargo was listed as general cargo, computers, textile goods, etc.
Mm.
And in accordance with the standard operating procedure at the time, the flight engineer on SAA 295 went back through the cabin and opened the door to the cargo area. He wanted to check the extent of the fire and the smoke and the fumes. But actually opening the door made the situation worse. And the captain immediately recognized that this was not a usual cargo fire, and which normally extinguishes when you depressurize. And the captain is heard on the CVR recording immediately commanding, "Close the bloody door," quote.
Hmm. So, what was the cause of these accidents?
So all three accidents show rapid cockpit contamination and damage. So ultimately, heat intrusion to the cockpit, smoke incursion, avionics failure, loss of visibility, and loss of control. In all three cases, the fire spread upwards and forwards to the cockpit and spread downwards into the cargo hold floor. In all three cases, the fire was self sustaining, and depressurization did not slow or starve the fire. The fire continued to intensify despite falling oxygen levels, and the fire spread rapidly and structurally, and the crew were unfortunately eventually overwhelmed.
So, what was the cause of the SAA Helderberg accident?
I think SAA 295 carried undeclared oxidizing dangerous goods that behaved with the same energy release and oxygen feeding characteristics as a lithium battery fire or oxygen generator fire. And the tests I recommend will prove it beyond all reasonable doubt. The fire timeline, the directional spread, and the self sustaining chemistry are closely similar in the SAA 295 as well as the UPS 6 and the ValueJet 592 accidents. And this, unfortunately, was an avoidable accident. And the regulatory framework has been changed drastically as a result. We're showing a screenshot of the key regulatory changes over the years. And the SAA 295 in 1987 brought in tougher main deck cargo fire protection. And effectively, from then on, the combi aircraft was phased out, a combination of passenger and cargo on the same main deck level. And there was improved smoke detection and oxygen system protection upgrades. And similarly with ValueJet and UPS, new regulations were brought in. One of the new regulations was in the cargo containers. There's a thing called a ULD, which is a standardized aircraft container or pallet designed to allow cargo to be loaded safely and securely and efficiently in an aircraft's cargo hold. And those ULDs must now be able to resist a lithium battery and high intensity cargo fire. And they must prevent fire spread through the aircraft. And they must be able to maintain structural integrity even under extreme temperatures. So we've moved a long way forward since 1987.
Yes, we sure have. It's an incredible tragedy, the Helderberg. I mean, any accident's a tragedy, but a cargo fire on the main deck, that would have been a ghastly experience for those passengers. It would have been absolutely awful. So great
Yeah.
research, Richard.
Oh, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
you're very welcome,
Yeah,
as always.
yeah. So, viewers, thank you very much indeed for watching. Tomorrow, we've got another treat for you. We've got Captain Kevin Sullivan coming back to answer some of your questions and talk about automation. And he was the captain of QF 72, the one that went rogue off the coast of Western Australia. And he will be joined by his co pilot, Peter Lipset. He's joining us tomorrow. And he's an expert in human factors as well as automation, and a very experienced Royal Australian Navy helicopter pilot to boot. So another Top Gun pilot. So there'll be the four of us, if you can put up with four people tomorrow night. So we do look forward to your company. So please subscribe to us, please like us, please do keep those wonderful comments coming and those great questions coming. We really do appreciate them. And Richard, once again, thank you for the tremendous work you've done on this episode. I know a lot of our viewers have been asking about this one, so hopefully they will find the answers they were looking for.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And viewers, please do tune in tomorrow. We do look forward to your company very much indeed, and thank you for your great support. Thank you.